Okay, can everybody see my my screen?
Yes, we can see online. It's looking good.
Okay, excellent. So, discovering requirements. So this is the first stage in back to the interaction design cycle. One question: how many of you, just by a show of hands, sorry, I don't have the time to create a Zoom application here, but how many of you have designed for augmented reality or before? Okay. Mixed? VR? Okay, very good. About half the people here have some experience there. So this should be familiar to you, right? We should start by figuring out who is going to use our application, who are the users, what do they perform, and what kind of tasks they want to develop. We usually want to have a deep understanding of who are our people, the people that are going to use our application, and to understand how extended reality can help address their needs. So again, we have these sacrosanct questions. Who are the users? Or who are the... Actually, I don't like, this is personal. I don't like the term users very much because most of the people who are going to use our applications do not necessarily use drugs. That's only two fields where people talk about users. That's us, developers, and the drug pushers. Well, we push XR, that's okay. But anyway, who are the people? What do they do? What are their characteristics? What is their level of education? In what environment do they often are they going to operate or interact with our application? And what do they need? So we need to understand what they currently do, or what we want them to do in the future, and we want to look for insights in what ways extended reality can improve their lives or improve their experience. And the interesting thing is that, of course, we know that extended reality is going to be the future. It's going to solve all problems, all crises, make everybody healthy and happy and productive. But we know that extended reality is not a panacea. Sometimes it can improve people's lives and solve problems, but it does not necessarily solve all problems. And again, we also need to consider different types of people with different needs, and we must consider them all. There are at least these three that we mentioned here. Primary people who are regularly going to use our smartphone application, Meta glasses or Vario or other or Samsung equipment. And these are usually the primary people who will be using. The other, we have people that are either providing tech support or developing the system. And the tertiary people are usually the guys paying for the equipment. Sometimes, you know, it's not necessarily that the boss is she who approves the purchasing decisions. Sometimes you can have one person just doing all three roles, including self-help. You know, as Nielsen says, help doesn't most often, and we have to be careful about this. But different constituencies, different stakeholders will have to have different requirements and probably different aspects of the same application or different applications altogether. For example, okay, let's get this into practical terms. Suppose we are going to develop, and this is a missed opportunity, right? We got our rug stolen from us by Zoom during the pandemics, and I still hope that we don't need another pandemic to grow VR and XR as an extended conferencing tool and collaboration. So the primary users would be everybody, right? All of us that right now use Teams, Zoom, or something similar. And we want them to use either the next generation of Meta glasses or Vario or Ray-Ban enhanced spectacles. And then these people will have trouble. So, you know, technology sometimes is a problem to meetings, as we have noticed in the past and currently notice. And we needed just before this course started here to have one IT person coming here and explain which USB connector we need to connect to my adapter in order to get room audio for Mark and remote people. And then we have tertiary users. Suppose we have building management, or we have the procurement people in an organization. Head-mounted display makers that they should focus on what are the characteristics. If I want to do video conferencing or VR conferencing or mixed reality conference on the go, what kind of equipment should we have to provide this? If I'm doing this on the subway, that's okay, but I don't think that I would like to be using a virtual reality display while driving. Some people have proposed it, and I know that there are a bunch of Apple Vision Pro users out there that focus on doing these things, but I would not advise it. So building or buying equipment, making purchasing decisions. So these people have different requirements, and we need to learn to identify user needs from different stakeholders. Learn from people, learn from experts, try and use metaphors to learn from analogous settings and immerse yourself in the context. There are tools for all these things. And the most difficult thing to do is observing what people do. If I'm going to develop the next video conferencing system, how would I learn users' needs? Well, I can observe what I do. I can do questionnaires and structured interviews. That's one way of getting user requirements. Focus groups is popular, although, you know, focus groups have a problem. Usually the input we get from focus group is the most vocal person in the group, tends kind of dominate the requirements, and we hear from that person, he or she. And my favorite one and the most difficult one is to observe people who are doing target tasks. So if you can make yourself to sit through a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or one of the many Google Meets, there are gazillion conferences, and ask yourself, in what way mixed, augmented, or virtual reality could improve this? What can I gain from putting a headset instead of staring at the screen? Oh, one first advantage is I can move around. Oh, but I can also do that with the cell phone. So what do I gain by immersion here? Maybe I can increase the sense of presence of people. I can have interactions of better quality. And this is all what we should be driven when we're trying to learn from people. Again, observation is good. Good interviewing is also a skill, and it needs to be done properly to make the most of the opportunity. Listening is a thing. I know you're listening to me, and this is kind of unidirectional right now, but there are several different ways in which you can interact with people. You can have your simple script, semi-structured interviewing, where you have a couple of subjects that you want to discuss with the person. You can have a very structured questionnaire on paper and ask them to write, or a Google form. But my favorites are listen and watching people, creating trusts, and inform the design through what you learn there. So what can you do? You can use closed questions, yes or no. How many times have you used VR in the past week? 5, 6, 1, 0. That's or open questions are the type of question where you say, well, list the one thing that annoys you most when interacting with your worst type of video conferencing system, or rank the video conferencing systems that you have used. Open questions are great, but then again, they need more work. Avoid long-winded questions, especially compound sentences, jargon, and language that people do not understand. Maybe details about IP or real-time protocols, which people, non-technical people, might have trouble. Leading questions that make assumptions, and this is problem. Why do you like? No, wait. My favorite leading question: why do you dislike Microsoft Teams so much? Why do you hate Google Meets? I have to be equal opportunity here. Sorry. Although I've okay. Anyway, pick your worst video conferencing system and say what you dislike most about it. Yeah, that would be okay. That would be not be so leading. Unconsciously, this is a problem of avoiding your unconscious biases. More than gender stereotypes, you have lots of other problematic issues. My favorite thing is watch what and observe what people do. They can say what they think or what you want them to hear. In fact, if you oh, okay, there is a favorite book of mine. Have you heard of a book by Reeves, Nass and Reeves, called The Media Equation? No. Okay, so this was a Stanford study, a team of psychologists that studied the attitudes of people towards media. And they found out, maybe you know this, I don't know if you tend to relate to computers the same way as I do. How many of you do use ChatGPT? Okay, I myself do use. Okay, how many of you have said nice things to ChatGPT in order to perform, to improve the performance? Okay, how many of you have cursed at ChatGPT and its family and its ancestors and Sam Altman? Okay, you know the idea now. We tend to relate to media the same way that we tend to relate to people, especially when that media seems to be conscient, which is okay. That would be a long-winded discussion. But the problem is that when you write a questionnaire, you have to avoid questions where people will be affected. Their responses will be affected by trying to be nice to you or to the Google Forms that they are going to reply to the questionnaire. So that's a question of bias. We tend to ascribe this. I tend to curse at ChatGPT a lot, actually, come to think of it. So, but anyway, so do you know how to grab the virtual object? This would be an example, and you see the movie there. And then in interviews, people tend to be a little bit nervous that that's another problem, that they appear to be stupid or incompetent. And that's one thing that you should make very clear to people who are interviewing, that we are going to test the design. We are going to create a design. We are not evaluating what is your performance. And that's very difficult. Otherwise, you have to avoid biases in people trying to be nice to you, biases in people trying to be nice to Google Forms. It happens. So in order to get good data and actionable ones, you need to have your interviewees feel relaxed and trusting. And for example, use feedback. Low fidelity prototypes are excellent for that. Where, for instance, when designing a handheld AR controller, ask people to put a sticker on the mock-up where the button should go, look at all the stickers and use that to inform the final placement. So paper prototypes are excellent to deal with people. You can learn a lot from low fidelity mock-ups. And then you can, of course, learn a little bit from experts. You can get a lot amount of information in a short time, and you should look for existing process and problem documentation, because then you can learn exactly what is the structure of the task that you're trying to improve using XR. And you should choose participants with a good domain expertise, people who are opinionated. Maybe you should ask Jaron Lanier what he thinks about your designs. You'll get lots of opinions, I'm pretty sure. He's a very opinionated person. You've heard about Jaron Lanier, right? Oh, no? Okay, so Jaron Lanier is a very opinionated guy, and he is the undisputed, at least according to himself, person who invented the term virtual reality. And I remember watching a very lively discussion about that. But he has lots of opinions about lots of other things. A little bit like Richard Stallman. You've heard about Richard Stallman, the GNU guy? So those are opinionated people. You get lots of strong opinions from them. Immersing yourself in contexts. Okay, put yourself in the user's shoes. You can do role playing. You can try and figure out what's. Was there a question? What's the day in the life of a person that will use? So you can do cultural probes, observe the problem space, so you can put yourself on an hospital bed if you're trying to do a system to help, say, treat patients locally or remotely. Take notes and capture your observations. Try to get information from analogous settings. For example, if you want to redesign your local library, you can go to Apple Store and you can see how people interact with the others, with other buyers and the assistants in the Apple Store, and think of metaphors that can help you connect that challenge. So you can find similar scenarios, people trying to check out books in a library. I know there aren't many people checking out books in a library, which is good for one reason and bad for lots of other reasons. But if you try to improve your local library using extended reality, then you can also look at the way people interact in a computer store. Apple Store is a good example, by the way. And then what you do with all this information. So try to define the problem, define your unique point of view, explain what is your design vision, and try to get a good understanding what people are, what kind of people will be using your app, and what is the design space? Are you going to design for augmented reality, virtual reality, or mixed reality? And design an actionable problem statement expressing your point of view. So to recap, here are some tools for problem definition. We've covered interviews. Personas is a way of clustering a series of requirements into a persona which personifies or encodes a group of different users. Clustering, developing empathy maps, task flow analysis, and you can develop a map of how the customer will interact with your product. So a persona is essentially a design tool to help visualize who you are designing for and imagine how the person will use the product. For instance, suppose you want to enhance the design, the buying experience at the supermarket. You could design the persona for the typical buyer, how they go about in the shelves and interact with the products and product information. So the persona is an archetype that represents the behavior and goals of a group of users. You can also have another persona for the cashier or the checkout operator. And so this is not a real person, but it's kind of a composite sketch synthesized from real users. It can be brought to, you can call the typical buyer a Joe. So Joe goes to the supermarket. Joe wants to buy products, but Joe wants to do a comparison in real time of two different projects, one that he knows from Amazon and another that he or she is looking at the shelves. And then you can describe what Joe would do, so the idea, why do you bring people, personas with to life with a name? It helps you tell little stories, also called scenarios, you know? A scenario is a little story that explains how interaction goes and how it ends well. Okay, scenarios also always have a happy ending. And you should develop multiple personas. Again, you can have Jane, the checkout operator, you can have Joe and Sylvia, two buyers, and you can also have Joanna, the supermarket manager. Those are examples. And here we have an example of personas for a given VR game. So you can say Gina Lyles, an hypothetical. And now, of course, these are not real people. We use ChatGPT to generate these people here so that they don't correspond to any known person here. So yeah, so otherwise we need to blur their faces, you know how it goes. So what are they good for? Use them to inspire empathy map, use them as a foundation to discuss design issues, use them to evaluate competitors' products, use them to find real people for usability testing, so you know what the characteristics are for a persona. And it's important, if you want to write papers about what your VR system is, at least for VR and ISMAR, you need to explain how you have made an effort to address the needs of the real people who are going to use your system. And I would, at this point here, yield to Mark. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about empathy maps?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me just actually you can control the slides from your side because
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to.
So the empathy map is designed to or for a way to you to synthesize the information you've learned from people from building personas and from creating interviews. And what you do with the empathy map is you create a 4-quadrant layout where you list what people say, what they do, what they think, and what they feel. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this shows you an example of the template. So here's the template you fill in. So what somebody is saying, you fill in the top left and fill the rest of it out. And you can list their pains and their gains. So what will make people happy? What is their frustration? Can you go to the next slide? So please play this video. This talks a little bit about what the mapping process. Oh, we're not hearing the audio, Joaquim. I'm not sure if you have not shared with the audio. Yeah, you should reshare with the audio, please.
The sound plays here, Mark.
Oh, I can hear it now. It's fine. It's great.
And Synapse helps teams start designing assumptions and start designing with clarity. They force you to slow down, look at things from the user perspective, and build shared understanding across your team. And that's the whole point. Less guessing, fewer debates, and better decisions. And Synapse are that simple. 4 areas where users say, think, do, and feel. But what makes them better is when and how you use it. Set goals. Are you allowed to use the team? Or redesign or present research to stakeholders, each one needs a different kind of map. Keep it messy, brainstorm, make it plain for execs. Go deep for decisions. Second, get real inputs. Don't wait. Highlight evidence on user tests and dig into behavioral data. The point is to reflect what users actually experience, not what you think they do. Third, make it collaborative. Ambassadors are not a solo activity. Bring in PMs, devs, and marketers. we're close to customers. Different perspectives make the insight stronger, especially early in the process. Force, use the right tool. Sticky notes, great for a quick team session. Miro, FigJam, Notion, perfect for teams. Whatever is easiest, just don't let the tool become project. Please keep it clean. You don't need to fill every quadrant with a wall of text. One strong insight per section beats a dozen reports. If it helps, add the pain and gain section to connect emotions to outcomes. And let's use it or lose it. The best empathy map is the one you actually refer to. Put it during planning. Share it in minutes and update it when you person to them.
That's great. Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please? So he talked a bit about the empathy map process. This just shows an example of an empathy map. In this case, it's a person considering buying the child's first bike. So in the top-hand corner, they say they want to buy a bike for the child. That's what they're saying. What they're thinking is that they want her to be happy and love the bike. What they want to do is visit shops and websites. And then what they feel is a bit conflicted. They're not sure if they can trust the retailers or not. So this gives you a whole perspective of the user. Can you go to the next slide, Joaquim? And then the way you use the empathy map is that you can look for insights into the person's needs, especially look for contradictions in the map. They may say one thing but do something else. Like the person might say that they really enjoy playing a particular sport, but when you ask them how often they play, they say, well, maybe once every 2 or 3 years. And then you can refer back to the map through the design process to see if you're addressing user needs, and use it also as a communication tools to present to other people to show more information about the users. Can you go to the next slide, Joaquim? So one example is somebody might say, I find it is really easy to get into a VR experience, but actually before they start using the VR, they may need to spend 5 or 10 minutes calibrating the eye tracking system in the VR, for example, in the Apple Vision Pro, so they can use it well. So they say it's really easy to get into VR, but it actually takes them a long time. And so the insight from that might be that you need to develop some sort of self-calibrating eye tracker that reduces the pain and the time to get into VR. Can you go to the next slide? And so this defines the process.
Is working on a design challenge and explore two simple yet powerful tools that can help us in understanding others. And is interested in applying design thinking to the prevention of skin cancer. This is a complex problem that does not have one solution. Where can we start? Sun exposure is a major risk factor for skin cancer. So exploring how people protect themselves from the sun seems like a promising place to start. Are there opportunities for innovative solutions there? Lucas does an internet search to find background information. However, since his goal is to invent a novel solution for this problem, he has to go beyond searching for what others have already come up with. So Lucas goes out to observe how people protect themselves from the sun. He has his own experiences and preconceptions, but he observes with fresh eyes and pays attention to every detail, looking for surprises and things that challenge his assumptions. He also engages them in conversation to learn more details. He captures observations and quotes on his notebook. An ice cream vendor arrives. Lucas realizes that he must work outdoors most of the day, a perfect person to ask about his sun protection habits. Lucas's detailed notes will help him identify opportunities for improving sun protection. To make sense of his observations, Lucas uses a framework called empathy map. He reviews his notes and decides to focus on the ice cream vendor. On the left side of the empathy map, Lucas uses the sections labeled say and do to unpack what he heard and saw from the ice cream vendor. Once he completes the say and do sections, Lucas moves to the right side of the empathy map. Here, he will make inferences about the person's thoughts and feelings. For example, the ice cream vendor said, I don't know why there is so much hype with sun exposure. Lucas interprets that the vendor thinks exposure to the sun is not dangerous. Going from observations to inferences will allow Lucas to uncover and define more meaningful, non-obvious problems. Focusing on art, the ice cream vendor who spends a lot of time at events, Lucas composes a problem statement that synthesizes one of art's needs related to sun protection. The third element in the problem statement, the insight, captures the inference from the empathy map that led Lucas to that.
Great. Can you go to the next slide, please, Joaquim? So you can see from the empathy map, that example, they talked about how they could identify user needs, and especially thinking about needs as a verb, not a noun. So it's an activity that you want to perform. And then once you've identified this need, then you can start the design process to solve for the need. Can you go to the next slide, please? So as an example of that, my father, when he came and visited me at my VR lab, he always seemed like he wasn't afraid of anything. But when in the VR lab, he tried a VR environment that had a virtual spider in it, and he got very scared and he started screaming and asked to jump out of the VR. So it's kind of a contradiction. He was a man who was seen to me to be afraid of nothing, but then when he saw a virtual spider, he got very afraid. Can you go to the next slide as well? So in one way you could express that is that he has a need to overcome his fear of spiders in a way that is easy and painless. And so how might we be able to help him overcome his fear of spiders? Maybe using VR or augmented reality to help overcome his fear. So that contradiction, seeing him be fearless, but then also being afraid of spiders, led to identifying a need and some insight how we might be able to help address that need. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the last thing I want to talk about, and then Joaquim will start talking about how to design for VR, is that, of course, XR is not necessarily the best solution for all of the problems we have in life. So problems ideal for XR are ones that involve visual elements or 3D spatial interaction or some physical manipulation. But tasks that involve heavy amounts of reading or text editing or need for connection with the real world and tactile and olfactory feedback aren't very well suited for XR. So go to the next slide, please. So for example, you can see here, there's a picture of a person who's tasting wine. And, you know, building a wine tasting simulator in VR probably isn't a good idea because it's very, very hard to simulate the smell of the wine. And then beside that is a person who's editing some text and pages, also not a good experience in VR. But if you're doing a building design or learning how to dance, then maybe AR and VR is great technologies for that. So one of the things you have to think about once you've identified people's needs is whether which technology is right for those needs. In many cases, it might be good to use an XR solution. In other cases, it may not be appropriate. So keep that in the back of your minds as well. So the next slide, Joaquim. I think that brings us to the end. So now I'll pass the time back to Joaquim, and he's going to talk now about how to design. Now you've identified the needs of people using XR, how to design for those needs.
So, okay, this was, I have two questions for you. Okay, do you think that XR would be good for visualizing TikTok videos? Sending email, reading books. Okay, let me try and find the, okay, learning some new physics-based skills. So how to use maybe inline skating or riding a bike for people who have not learned to ride a bike. Alrighty. One more question before we move on to the next thing. Have you learned a new technique about your requirements gathering in this previous session? Raise if your arm if you did. Okay, which one? Mapping, right? Okay, thank you. So we have one more session before the break. Let me quickly get there.